Today we're talking to Gastón, one of the most influential figures in the fintech ecosystem in Latin America. CEO and the co-founder of Pomelo since 2021, he led the company's expansion into 8 markets and with over 150 clients, from banks to fast-growing fintechs, including Itaú, Nomad, Western Union, Dollar App, DG, and PicPay. Before Pomelo, he was the CEO of Naranja X, helping to create Argentina's largest neobank, led the growth of Restaurando until its acquisition by TripAdvisor, and founded Guide Central, which was acquired by WikiHow. He also worked in Google in Buenos Aires and Dublin. Recognized by the World Economic Forum as a technology pioneer and global innovator, Gastón is now an international leader in financial infrastructure and innovation, teaching fintech and entrepreneurship at the University of San Andres. Gastón, first of all, welcome. Welcome to Finance of Tomorrow here at the podcast. My name is Bianca Lopez, and we have Gastón, the CEO and co-founder of Pomelo. Bienvenido.
Hey, Bianca. Bienvenido. Thank you. No, it's great to be here. Thank you so much, Bianca. It's been long due, so very happy to be here with you today.
Absolutely long overdue as two crazy entrepreneurs crossing the world to change it through finance. So you've been on this ride for a couple of years. Gastón, I always like starting with the human. So just to warm you up, tell us a little bit about who Gastón is, and then we'll get into Pomelo and how you've seen this shift and this change in the Latin landscape.
Sounds great. So Gastón, co-founder and CEO of Pomelo, as you mentioned, Argentinian, but have lived abroad several times. I've lived in the US, in Switzerland, in Ireland, in Peru as well, and a couple of times in Argentina, where I'm based today. Have worked in tech my entire life. Started at Google, was one of the first 5 employees for Google in Latin America. Then
that must have been a ride. We need a whole other episode to talk about PST of working for big tech companies. I'm going to do this offline show eventually when we talk about recovering bankers, regulators, and okay.
Yeah.
Employee number 5. How many years ago was this? Seeing the change of Googling, bringing what? Technology, cloud to Latin?
Yeah. So I started in 2006, a couple of years after the IPO. Obviously, I was very junior at the time, but it was amazing to work within, an incredible company as they expanded globally. So it was a great school for me. That also brought me to Europe, worked in the first sort of YouTube partnerships team, trying to monetize YouTube for the first time. And after that, I started my first company. It's been 13 years now as an entrepreneur. Pomelo is only 4.5 years old, but I've done several other things in Europe, the US, and Latin America. So yeah, I mean, that's basically me. Apart from that, love, sports, and just technology in general. But Pomelo has been keeping me very, very busy. So here we are.
What made you as a serial entrepreneur? So clearly the itch of always creating change. Well, what made Pomelo be it? Tell me that founder CEO story. And then we'll get into the why, because you've raised a lot of capital in a crazy time.
Yeah. So Pomelo basically was born out of our own frustration. Juan and Nan and I, 3 co-founders, had been working in financial services and in fintech for quite some time. Before Pomelo, I built a neobank in Argentina called Naranja X, which now has about 5 million. It's probably over 6 or 7 million users right now. Hernan had been
congratulations. We will give because right now this is run by a separate team, but hey, 5 to 6 million. Is it in Argentina still, Gastón?
Yeah, they started to expand internationally. So exciting times as well. And yeah, we built that with Hernan. I actually hired Hernan from Mercado Pago, where he spent over a decade, 12 years at Mercado Pago. He was one of the first 3 employees in the history of Mercado Pago as well. So he saw everything from within and had a great ride there, and worked a lot with the wallet and the card, expanding it throughout the region, including Brazil, Mexico, Colombia, Chile, Argentina. So Anand and I had been working together for quite some time. We built Naranja X from scratch. We had known Juan from the industry as well. We had bought from Juan and from MasterCard, a couple of times in those previous experiences. But listen, at the end of the day, the three of us were very, very frustrated with the payments infrastructure and the financial services infrastructure around Latin America. We suffered it firsthand in all those experiences and from different angles, building product, selling the networks into the fintechs, and just trying to scale companies in the region. And that was by far the biggest problem that we came across and that we encountered during those years and those prior companies. And we decided to fix it. So, we were born out of our own frustration. Our experience became our thesis. And yeah, to your point, I think investors like that because we're passionate about the problem and, it will take a long time to fix it. So it's going to be a long journey. And, but hopefully, something massive can be built out of this.
Most definitely. And I think we've seen it that in spite of, challenging interest rates, decreasing in challenging economies and currencies, Argentina can teach one or two about resilience. I often say we tell the story through the lenses of chaos instead of through the lenses of opportunity. If you look at the average fintech growth rate and getting to 6 million in the interest rate differentiate, and you look at Europe and how we just adorize these things, I think comparatively, you've done a ton. And the ton that you've done show the experience in this wealth of team. And one of the things I want to dive into is how is it raising capital through this challenging time? Pomelo has raised a considerable amount of capital in a short period of time. And this has a lot to do, not only speaks to your guys' wealth of experience, but understanding the pain point. I often say it's easy to find a company that raises capital when they're solving a real problem. So tell us a little bit about, but not often that's the case when you're talking about a challenging economy. We've all learned this in the global South that, you know, capital talks, but doesn't necessarily always walk the walk when it comes to risk. How's that been for all the entrepreneurs or aspiring entrepreneurs listening out there?
Yeah. No, you're spot on. We've raised $105 million to date. Even though we started 4.5 years ago, our last round was almost 2 years ago. So that made us raise 105 million in, a little bit less than 3 years. But interestingly, we raised at the very peak of 2021. And then we also raised during probably the hardest time in the last 20 years. So in Q3, Q4, 2023. So those were very, very different capital raising experiences. And it's actually very interesting to go through kind of the different, stages of the cycle. Capital raising does change a lot from one to the other. At the end of the day, it makes you, sort of a better company because you have to navigate those different stages. Ultimately, I think for Latin American companies as well as emerging market companies, it's always a little bit more difficult than for most companies out there, or at least the ones in more mature markets, because access to capital is very, very dependent on sort of, the cycles, but also what's happening in your region and what's happening in other regions, because a lot of these investors allocate globally and, they sort of prioritize one region over the other based on what's going on or their own mandates and so on and so forth. But I also think that the best companies, whether they are from Latin America or any other region or market, do raise capital and manage to raise despite of what's happening. Obviously, it gets a little bit easier when it's a bull market and when, access to capital is cheap. But I think they also manage to raise when it's hard times, and a lot of investors that are fully committed to your thesis or to your region understand that the best companies are made during those years and are very resilient and find their way and their path. So I do think that continues to be true. And ultimately, you have to build a solid company, structurally very, very solid company that can go, or navigate absolutely any sort of circumstance. You're truly and really judged by your ability to build something over 10, 20, 30 years. And those are the best companies, and those will have access to capital regardless.
I couldn't agree more. So tell me a little bit about that thesis and what it was like 4 years ago versus what's like now. Like how has Pomelo's thesis sort of evolved? Like give me the 30-second pitch on the thesis so we can see, not that you're raising, but all for all the wanting to be part of your future journey folks out there. We do have some pretty big senior folks listening.
Yeah. So many things have not changed in the last 4.5 years, which is good because the thesis remains very, very relevant and up to date. And essentially was the fact that when we built those prior companies, it was very hard for us to be able to launch financial services in any given market. But even more so, it was incredibly difficult to scale, that offering throughout the region. So if you look at companies like, Mercado Pago or even Nubank or Voila, and so many others, it's been about a decade for them, and they're still, sort of fighting and pushing and improving their value props throughout the region. So it means that you need, 8 to 10 to 12 years and hundreds of millions of dollars in investment, massive teams to be able to put together a decent value prop. And we thought that was incredibly frustrating. It did take 80% of our time, money, resources, headaches to build those companies that I mentioned before. And so we thought there must be a better way, and that's exactly what we've been doing. We've been building a modern regional infrastructure for the region, allowing companies to be much better at payments and to have a good, compelling and uber local value prop in each market in Latin America in a completely different fashion than how it was done up until a few years ago.
And this leads me to the question of when you realize you don't have to build everything and you realize that there's a lot of value in Rails and ubiquity and creating that efficiency, I can't help myself with the buzzword bingo of AI. And as UNESCO Global Council member of AI, we often talk about what is the real use case. You've heard this with any hype technology. I've been through many cycles in biometrics where I started my career, or we've seen it with blockchain a couple of years ago, and now we're seeing it with buzzword bingo AI. But there's real opportunity there. I don't know how you feel, Gaston, but being Brazilian and having worked across the globe in less privileged areas, as one might say it, we haven't done a hell of a lot in changing financial services. If we really look at it, the average person does not care about, now you can call it memes, coins, stocks. They didn't even understand it in the first place. And access to basic things or better, more efficient payments on SME markets in Argentina. How have you done that? You've been looking at this I know you have over, I think, 150 clients across 8 different markets, if my statistics are not wrong. And you've seen this deliver true operational efficiency. That's how you've grown. And obviously capital follows where real growth is in times of change, like we just talked. Where are you seeing this really deliver value?
Yep. So first off, I couldn't agree more if we look at LATAM and emerging markets in general, but I think in our region, financial services haven't changed much. We really need to step up when it comes to financial services. Same with healthcare, same with education. These are all very, very basic yet incredibly important things that are pretty much given in more mature markets, of course, with their own challenges and so on and so forth. But I think these are probably 3 of the core industries that need to be brought to the 21st century. And hopefully we're trying, to solve at least the financial services piece. We do believe that if we have better financial services infrastructure, a lot more and better financial services will be delivered to people and to companies, and we'll be able to, make a lot of economic progress as a region, and as a result of that, obviously, social progress and so on and so forth. When it comes to AI, I think what I see these days, first off, most companies all over the world, if you're not sort of AI native and you're building something completely new and modern, everyone has started with operational efficiency, trying to, improve workflows and lower the cost and, diminish the amount of errors and so on and so forth. And I think that has been also true for financial services. Second, which starts to tie a little bit more into what we do, is improve go-to-market. I think we've been able as an industry to create a lot more use cases and features and product with the same amount of sort of effort, so to speak, or investment. And I think that's kind of step two, improving, go to market for your customers by being able to deliver a lot more value in the same amount of time. And I think third, which we still haven't seen that much, is AI applied to the value prop effectively. So things like, agentic payments, for instance, are we going to see sort of tokenized cards within agents, buying from your e-commerce platform on your behalf based on, some prompts that you've, entered, or basically the knowledge that the AI may have about you. And I think this last piece, it's kind of in the works. We still haven't seen much around the world, and even less so in Latin America. But I think, those are the kind of things that are exciting and we're working on and we should see in the near future.
I also totally agree. I often ask the question, I'm like, I know fear makes the news and is like more exciting to make people scared, but when I often see these, like, you can picture, right? This image of like a robot and some horrible wording around taking it over your life or your job, and that's the future. I often ask myself, like, why are, like, first of all, we're totally asking the wrong question. Nobody was meant to slave to begin with and work as many crazy hours as we do. Secondly, we've yet to solve so many basic things. So when we look at even the like 5 C's of credit or data analysis or context, like you said, on genic payments, look at the inefficiencies to a small SME or the guys or even big corporates that are in countries that are considered, even if on the OFAC list, risky. You see that, well, could you be asking sort of this doomsday question that this thing's going to end my job, that is actually going to make me think of different types of products and look at the intelligence that I wasn't able to compute with all the information that it's out there. Like, when we look at a world where Latin America contributes to the second after India and China, because, well, really India, we can see the numbers, China not, in social interactions. Like, we're the biggest in WhatsApp, we're the biggest in all the way. We're digital. Like, we might not, but we're digital. So what does this really mean because I often want to say, can we stop the narrative of deepening inequality and just ask better questions of ourselves, better business models, better products? Tell me, do you think I'm too optimistic, Gastón?
I am. I'm definitely optimistic. To your point, I do agree with you. I think we're well positioned. I think we can leapfrog, in several fronts. Um, I think, we're not replacing, people's jobs. We're enhancing, people's sort of economic activity. At least that's, what we have seen thus far. Obviously, any innovation cycle requires people to sort of upskill and some areas of the economy might be at a little bit of risk, but first and foremost, it represents a massive opportunity for absolutely anyone, to develop things that we have never seen before and to, move both socially and economically. In other words, reduce sort of that inequality gap as we have never ever seen before. Anyone, can now, become, super literate around AI and build incredible things, or simply become a significantly better professional by learning how to use AI and leverage AI. So I fully agree with you. I think this represents a massive opportunity for Latin America as a whole. And going back to some of the practical use cases that we have seen or implementations, I do think that AI is already starting to do a great job in terms of fraud prevention, which is big all over the world, but has hit strongly in Latin America. Countries like Mexico, Brazil, as you know, are very, very exposed to fraud and online fraud. And I think this is it's challenging, of course, because fraudsters can use AI as well. But I think we've started to see some very interesting implementations of AI in terms of fraud prevention. And then, of course, in terms of the lending business and being able to better assess both people and companies, and hopefully powering individuals and SMEs in particular with more, credit lines and working capital to grow their businesses. That's incredibly important. I think AI is already doing things that we haven't seen before, and that should be to our benefit for sure.
I couldn't agree more, Gaston. In another lifetime, well, in this lifetime, I'm an identity total geek. Started my career in biometrics, learning that, and that's why I joke and say it's the buzzword bingo, because back in the day, we used to call it
Yep.
data, and data wasn't sexy. And then the consultants made it really sexy and profitable. And now we call it AI. And we're still just like the mathematicians in the room are like, guys, still just like numbers. So when we look at this, another part that I get really excited about the opportunity, and this is why Finance of Tomorrow exists, is we bring, like last year was our first year, this year is our second year, but we brought over 16 countries, regulatory bodies of different types of regulations, because as we all know, digital knows no borders. Tokenization and DeFi have taught us that in spades. There's wallets hanging around left, front, and center, and the market has been hot. I've just came back from stablecoin conference from Bitso and other things around the Genius Act that just came out. Lead me to want to wander to the next buzzword bingo of the month, which is stablecoins. I remember, I don't know about you, Gaston, but I remember working for an amazing person in the Canadian Central Bank. It was explaining to me the Mint, which was the first CBDC way back when in payments, when we were talking about custody and identity. In this crazy landscape, what do you see LATAM and regulation? Do you see it as I know I'm a little bit biased because I know Pomelo has been using it as an opportunity, but how have you looked at this, regulatory landscape of diversity that is Latin America? Let's put it in a positive. Let's use the biodiversity word to talk about regulation, and then
Yeah.
we'll aim to bring them back together in the corner.
Yeah. So two very big topics. Starting off with regulation. I think obviously there's a lot of asymmetry when it comes to regulation in Latin America. I always joke that Latam will never ever have such a thing as a Latin American central bank as Europe does, for instance. And so, that's challenging because when it comes to scaling financial services and being able to roll out and launch and, grow your fintech solutions around the continent is obviously like a massive headwind and represents a big challenge. And it requires a lot of investment to be able to be compliant and, have all these licenses that are required to run a financial services business around the continent.
Mhm.
On the other hand, at this point in time, I think everyone knows that regulation is there to help us do more business and better business. And I think long gone are the days where, people were trying to, avoid or go around regulation. I think even like the users and, companies out there are now asking for compliance solutions that are in line with regulation, whether it's local, regional, or global. So we now see regulation as a massive asset. I think it also brings and creates a lot of defensibility around our respective companies. If I think about Pomelo, to this day, we even though it's only been 4.5 years, we already have regulatory licenses in 3 markets. We're fully licensed by Visa and MasterCard to issue debit, credit, and prepaid in 6 markets. We are PCI compliant. We have our ISO 27001, license as well. We are, I cannot describe how many bodies, do work closely with Pomelo, grant us licenses, audit us, and so on and so forth. And even though it's a lot of work, we believe it's a massive asset. It's something that gives our customers a lot of peace of mind. And at the end of the day, as part of our infrastructure value prop, we sort of embed a lot of regulation into everything that we do. And so we are 100% in favor of compliance solutions that, allow our customers to do more and better business. So that's on the sort of on the regulation side of things. In terms of stable coins, yeah.
Breath
super hot
there.
topic. Okay. Yeah.
Let me let you take a breath
I
there, and let me
yeah.
and let me react to that. First of all, music to our, you can take a water break. I said first of all, music to our ears that you share the importance and the opportunity that regulation brings. A huge part of what we do here at Finance of Tomorrow is this aim of bringing the regulators not only from Latin America, but across the world together to truly understand when we're talking about a tomorrow and a better tomorrow for people, people are global by nature, even though they have to take care of, physical boundaries. I often been saying to entrepreneurs across the world how it is an opportunity. And I think we've started to see that with new technologies and PSPs or just VASPs in the tokenized space. We've saw a bit of no man's land and a gold rush. And now we're starting to say, hey, mother, may I? Which is my favorite sentence that I learned working with the OCC and the Fed back then. How do you find bringing the talent? Because I think another part is this relationship with regulators is a relationship of exchange, as you politely brought up earlier. Unfortunately or fortunately, criminals don't really follow compliance proofs of concepts, and they do use the greatest and latest technology out there to catch people. And as we look at what we're all trying to do, we're all trying to build just a better world, right? Through financial infrastructure, through technology, to help people do what they do best, whether it's trade, build an artisan market, or help with medicine, like you said. How do you build a team to deal with that? Because this is it's really challenging. You said many regulatory bodies, a huge amount of capital deployed, changes all the time. Give us a little, I know a lot of leaders struggle with that, and that's a huge proponent of your growth magic that you've been able to achieve. So give us a little advice before we go off to stablecoin CBDC tokenized land.
Yeah, sounds good. Listen, I think it has to be a collaborative process. We have to understand what regulators are here for, which is essentially to protect the local, financial ecosystems, including all the players that operate within them, all the way from the end user to, the networks, companies, and so many others. So they are here for a good reason and with a good purpose. Then, of course, each regulator has their own sort of view of the world, their own sort of risk appetite, their own speed or lack of, and so on and so forth. But they're here for a good reason. And so, on the other hand, they are eager to create situations and ecosystems that are good for business and that allow for more business from more parties with more competition. And so, once you understand that, I think it's the next step is operating in a collaborative fashion. They are, broadly speaking, open to hearing what you have to say and what you have to suggest. They understand that innovation goes fast and they need to adapt to that. In many cases, as we have seen in Brazil, they are actually leading the way, but more often than not, they are sort of reacting to the innovation that they see in the market, and they need to understand it, and they need to create the frameworks that allow businesses to excel within those environments. And many times we have worked very closely with them to create use cases that did not exist before, including crypto, including stable coins. Some of the markets have challenges around sort of, currencies like the American dollar, or they are taxing those kind of transactions, as you know. Many times we work closely with the regulators. And so for that, and tying back to your question, you do need people that have experience, working with them, whether it's in, other fintechs that have, filed for licenses or, being in their sort of roundtables or their sandboxes, or even people that come from the regulator themselves, or people that have done sort of risk and compliance at banks. So what I do see is that sort of compliance, risk, legal profiles that were not that all that valued in the marketplace from a fintech perspective in the past are now super important profiles, and at the end of the day, it's part of the asset that the company has. And those relationships do go a long way because the regulators trust the people that have done good things for the ecosystem before. So our legal compliance and risk team, just to put a few examples, it's pretty comprehensive. And we at this point in time, directly or indirectly, we have worked with almost 10 regulators from around the region. And at the end of the day, that's also like an asset and gives us the flexibility, as I was describing before.
That is amazing. And I've looked at your team, so I wanted you to have this little clip of you saying that so your marketing team can tag your leadership. Working with the regulators is a huge part of what we do. And just to give you an idea, Gaston, like our event is like 600 people, 300 of them are regulators. And out of the 300, 150 are senior leaders like heads of cabinets or directors or superintendents of financial authority. And the reason why that's so important is an opportunity to bring them together in a neutral place where there's no commercials, there's no infomercials, for them to truly exchange. As you said, all country regulators are not the same and don't get the same budgets for the same amount of teams. And having been Brazilian myself and haven't been so proud of what we've been able to do in volume. And what we've been able to teach the world around privacy and security, and also what we're learning when it comes to this space and opportunity. So give me the Pomelo insight. You are looking, and now we'll change to the buzzword bingo of the month that will stay for a couple more years, I think. We all know that the world's getting tokenized. Surprise, surprise, we've all drank the Kool-Aid. We've talked and confused ourselves in the past between store of value and just, a new data infrastructure. I've seen it on the news. Pomelo has been in the space for some time, obviously leading the way with some spaces around the regulatory landscape of stablecoins, CBDC. Give me the scoop. What have you been working on, and what do you see as an opportunity for this technology and this new rails on this space? I'm assuming you have lots of thoughts as being a principal issuer of both of the existing framework rails across 6 markets, if I caught that right.
Yeah. So it's simply put, the way we see the world is, on the payments world anyways, is we are or have been in a sort of migration from first like one single sort of offline rail, which was basically cash, or you could argue like checks as well. For the last 2 to 3 decades, we've also been operating on the cards rails as well. Up until 6-7 years ago in Latin America, you would either use cash or cards. And now we continue sort of that journey towards a multi-rail future, and I would argue already a multi-rail present. So you have to throw in there real-time payments. Obviously PIX in Brazil, but we're seeing more and more central banks pushing similar solutions, like in Mexico, in Colombia. Argentina already has its own, and so on and so forth. And then, of course, crypto. And within crypto, stablecoin is gaining a lot of traction these days. So at the end of the day, what I'm trying to say is like we already operate and work with 4 core rails. Cash, which is sort of an offline rail, if you want to put it in those terms, obviously losing share of wallet, which is great, against the 3 sort of digital rails. And we will continue to see, the cards rail, the real-time payments rail, and the crypto rail sort of coexist, compete, collaborate for, the years or the decades to come. And it is in that context that, now there's a lot of hype and momentum around stablecoins, obviously on the back of Genius Act, but also on the back of what at this point in time, about 15 years of Bitcoin's existence and sort of crypto adoption curve. And yes, I mean, we've been doing lots of work in the space. We issue cards for, pretty much every single crypto exchange, large or small, global, regional, or local in the region. And most recently, we've been issuing lots of cards for stablecoin based banks, right? Which are now gaining a lot of momentum. So yeah, that's kind of where we are right now.
We will do another follow-up. I'm gathering a stablecoin crew for us to talk myths and do's and don'ts around Latin America and the world, because there's like so many conversations around this space. And I couldn't agree with you more, Gaston. Like, what we need is an entire new infrastructure. When we look at the entire stack, I'm a firm believer that, first of all, we never thought of the user in beginning with, which is why identity is not at the center, but that's my identity hat on. But when we look at payments and the inefficiency around it, like, you're going to have multiple rails. You're going to have a conversation around geopolitics that is beyond if one particular technology is going to run. And what I'm hearing you is to say that here Pomelo is there to build this multi infrastructure, whether it's Rails or tools or APIs, just for the betterment of LATAM. Am I hearing that right?
Yeah, that's right. So I think within the future of finance, there's also sort of the future of payments, and the future of payments, lies within those four rails or potentially others that we still haven't seen. And so we're in the business of building that sort of modern infrastructure for the region. Obviously, when we first started, we started with anything or and everything card related, because to this day continues to be sort of the number one digital rail. And there's lots of new exciting use cases, some of which are in the intersection, with crypto, with real-time payments. So these rails kind of intertwine a little bit themselves. But yeah, I mean, thinking ahead, we are building this sort of ecosystem of payment solutions that go way beyond card. We already have like a very comprehensive credit card management software, but that might as well be used and can be used, to do lending and credit on top of, PIX, or on top of, stable coins, and that kind of thing. So yeah, definitely sort of evolving in that direction. And I think also as ever, it's all about, creating value for specific use cases. And I think, some of these rails will be better for some use cases. So I don't think there's going to be like a single winner. Maybe we end up discovering that, to move money globally and sort of cross-border stable coins end up being the best solution, which is kind of what's, being sort of discussed or argued these days. But maybe we also realize that, for us to do like local transactions, cards that have like a wide acceptance, on the back of decades and decades of the Visas, MasterCards, American Expresses of this world, going after the merchants, remains like the best possible experience. And that experience continues to evolve. As now we are tapping, our phones to make payments. And then in the future, we might as well have, an agent that is purchasing, with a tokenized card and all those kind of things. So I guess my point is, all these technologies are there to be used, and they will sort of compete for different use cases. And it's very, very likely that some of them are better than others, but there's no single sort of winner for all things payments or all things finance.
I couldn't agree more. I think the only thing that will win is when we learn how to listen, which I think is something we haven't as a society. And I think technology and all these tools are kind of meant to be there when we look at financial services and products. As you said, there's much space for real innovation to transpire. And getting to the cost basis is what a lot of this new technology allows us to do. Allows us to change unit economics and look at
That's right.
use cases that no longer existed. Meanwhile, they were right there in your face when people were underserved and underbanked or unbanked. But here we are with lenses on. Gaston, you've been inspiring, and you keep bringing a culture of change. And to me, anybody who's from anywhere in the world that truly cares about going back and building infrastructure for where they came from deserves my, if nothing else, applause. I always like leaving our listeners with just the same gratitude that I feel from sharing and listening to the stories. What advice would you leave for entrepreneurs? You've been a serial one in spite of all the PST and the burnout that it takes to be an entrepreneur, because I know it's overhyped, but hey, let's be real here. It's very hard. And if we ask the families, they'll tell you stories too.
Sure.
What do you leave people out there that look, at the big millions that you've raised or the big things that you're doing? Like, be real with me and with them at Finance of Tomorrow. We like being neutral. What advice would you leave us parting with?
Yeah. So it's absolutely as you said, like, it's simple things really, but difficult ones at the same time. I think, to be an entrepreneur, you have to be truly and really, really committed for the long run. No one should be building a company because they want to sell it. Everyone should be building companies because they want to solve real problems. And real problems take a very, very, very long time to be fixed, and even more so in Latam or in emerging markets, because of all the reasons that we explained and discussed before, and many others that we simply didn't have time to. Um, So I think it has to be a lot of, commitments to that mission, understanding that you have to change and improve and be vulnerable along the way. At the end of the day, is, having very low ego to be able to capture all the learnings as fast as possible and incorporate them, for the benefit of the company and for your own benefit as an entrepreneur and any executive or manager or person that works within the organization, because that's a real, growth engine. The good thing about startups is that the velocity at which you can grow professionally and by extension of that personally is second to none. I don't think there's any other sort of profession that gives you the ability or the luxury of learning so fast. But you have to understand that, failing is part of the journey and you have to embrace failure as part of that sort of learning curve. And yeah, it will come with lots of trade-offs, as you pointed out. But I think it's totally worth it. It's worth it because, your customers will be happy. It's worth it because you'll be solving real problems. And probably like it's even better when you hear from your own teams and those, journeys and experiences from people that are extremely thankful to the opportunities that you've given them and how much they have been able to grow. And at the end of the day, it's also about sort of, raising the bar from, from a skill set perspective for our own regions. So it's fun, it's tough, but it's extremely rewarding and it's a growth journey.
Well, we will leave all the comments for people that want to find out more about Pomelo's growth journey and maybe join us through the process. Gastón, it's been a pleasure having you here as one of the other founders here in Latin America, sharing this story. We've had Mercado Libre, we've had you guys, we've had some big guys changing the world. And as you said, holding accountable the opportunity and the size and the responsibility that we have to use all this cool buzzword bingo and innovative technology to change how the world actually looks today and tomorrow. I wanted to say thanks. So if you want to, we'll leave all the show notes, all the information for people to get a hold of you and a hold of Pomelo and be able to partner. And I hope to get to see you in Brazil at the event, if not this year, the next year, and part of this community that's looking to change the world.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Bianca. It was great fun. I really enjoyed our conversation and congrats on all the progress thus far with Finance of Tomorrow and best of luck for the years to come.
Thank you so much, Gastón.